Hello. I have an hour of Fallout lore covering both the games and Amazon Prime TV show. The TV show itself is part of the game universe. There are some slight differences, yet most of the events that happen in both Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and Fallout 4 have all been confirmed to have happened in the TV show, and the characters from the TV show find themselves having to deal with the ramifications of all of those events. The latest example would be the war within the different tribes and groups in the New Vegas area. The wars and fights between the Brotherhood of Steel, the New California Republic, the Legion. And so in this video, we're basically just going to go over all of these groups, all of these different factions, all of the events and the overall history that led to the current Fallout universe in both the show and the upcoming games too, which again have been confirmed to all be connected. The video itself will be split into 6 chapters, with chapter 1 being the pre-war America, the major global powers, and also the major companies like Vault-Tec, and how all of the decisions led to global thermal nuclear war and eventual catastrophe across the planet. Right before the war, American life and life around the planet was similar to the 1950s American lifestyle. However, there are some very major key differences. Advancements in technology, particularly cold fusion, led to more people having access to almost infinite energy. But it wasn't for the common person, it was more for the corporations responsible. We see them developing things like robots and AI, and then we also see many people protesting them and destroying them. We also see global tensions, particularly between America and China, who have engaged in conflicts such as in Alaska. These conflicts led to a growing fear of war, which led to things like hoarding, things like overproducing and overselling. We also see Vault-Tec take advantage of this, probably most likely that they're the reason. We'll probably find out that they're the reason for the global tensions in the first place. They definitely built and profited from all the vaults that they created. We also find out that many of these vaults are secret experiments created from Vault-Tec, and as you continue to watch the show, you find out that even the people in Vault-Tec, their employees themselves, are being experimented on. So we honestly don't really know who is at the very top, who is in charge. We do see Hank McLean. He is a senior member and a very high authority member of Vault-Tec. However, one episode in season 2 shows him reporting to somebody else completely unrelated to Vault-Tec. So at this point, we don't know who he's working for. We don't really know who is in charge of Vault-Tec and what Vault-Tec's complete motivations are. We do know that they basically started the war and ended the planet so that they can have a monopoly over all of humanity, so that they can be the first ones to restart civilization and dictate how that civilization goes. We see that with Hank McLean, who sees the growing and prosperous city of Shady Sands. Claim is that they destroy Shady Sands in order to stop them from taking water from Vault-Tec. But the most likely truth is that Vault-Tec decided to destroy Shady Sands in order to stop them from developing further and being the number one civilization on Earth after it ended. Doing so would basically give them immense power, and whoever is running Vault-Tec would literally be the ruler of Earth, pretty much. There are also flashbacks of either Mr. House or somebody who might be Mr. House, we're not too sure yet. He uses mind control devices on unsuspecting patrons at a bar, which shows that they have already developed that technology way back in the 50s. era before the bombs dropped. Another exciting new tidbit is the Deathclaw, which I believe most of us assumed formed after the nuclear fallout and development of the wastelands. But on an episode of season 2 of the Fallout show, we see Walter, aka the Ghoul, fight a Deathclaw, or at least get attacked by a Deathclaw and then survive as it runs away. So we really truly have no idea how far Vault-Tec or other companies managed to develop technology, but we are just seeing a lot of those remnants of technology show up in both the games and the Fallout show. So chapter 2, we have the Great War starting and the beginning of the Fallout. It was 2077 when the bombs dropped, global nuclear destruction started. Again, 2077 in the show timeline, but the technology and aesthetic of the show is more of 1950s America. The war itself lasted only about 2 hours, as tensions between China and America, as well as the rest of the planet, basically reached a tipping point of no return. Nuclear strikes were launched on all sides between all parties, leading to the eventual global destruction of the world. However, recent revelations in the show reveal that the very first strikes were most likely initiated by Vault-Tec in order to start their plan of destroying the world and then resetting it and restructuring it in their image. It's most likely that they are the ones who fueled and slowly stemmed all of the global tensions which eventually led to the war. We also see Walton Goggins' Cooper Howard, aka the Ghoul, experience this firsthand. He's in LA as the eventual bombs go off and they evacuate. We do not see where he goes. We don't really see what happens between that moment and how he becomes the Ghoul. But the first 2 seasons of the show so far have shown his journey prior to the war beginning, showing how he navigates finding out that Fallout, that Vault-Tec is not only responsible for the upcoming major catastrophes, but that they have employed his wife. His own wife was actually the major component and one of the initial proposers to bring this plan up. We still don't know much regarding the Ghoul or Cooper Howard's story, but the show is slowly giving us tidbits, and eventually I believe we will find out why the Ghoul is separated from his family, what happened to his family, and if they are, and I believe they are still most likely still alive in the current wasteland. So after the first initial reports of the war and bombs going off in every major city around the world, we see citizens who have been priorly chosen or have paid to be let into Vault-Tec, many different vaults around the world. They are hidden bunkers deep underground. They require a giant elevator most of the time, or a giant steel cylinder wall, a door that rolls sideways. Many players of the games will know that they often start off in a bunker or in a Vault-Tec, and a huge revelation or moment of the game is leaving that bunker and experiencing the open world for the first time. We also see that with Lucy and eventually her brother Norm, as they both exit the vaults and basically just breathe fresh air, as it's something they've never experienced as they lived in vaults their whole lives. And then we actually kind of see the polar opposite with Maximus, where he spent his whole life on the surface in the wasteland, surviving by joining the Brotherhood of Steel. And then he actually enters a vault and the community accepts him, providing him with food, shelter, and even at one point caviar. And this completely, for the moment, changes his entire attitude, which I think is hilarious. Most of the vaults we see are similar in some aspects. They have underground shelter, beds, rooms, some type of community where there's some kind of school. Oftentimes they ration and produce food together. They always wear the same blue-yellow uniform, which I believe is one of the rules of Vault-Tec. But most vaults are also unique and different in their own way as regards to how they operate, how they treat population, how they ration their food, basically how they exist almost. See that some are living extremely good lives, just having plenty of resources available and never having to deal with hostile raiders. And then we see and eventually find out that other vaults are using completely vile methods and other ways to keep their vault residents alive. Discover that every vault is actually its own experiment, and some of these experiments can lead to crazy outcomes. We see that one vault led to the creation of super mutants. We see another vault where Hank uses the mind control technology, and apparently they were brainwashing the residents. So while some vaults, maybe most vaults, were good for the residents, every single vault itself was its own experiment, which was being monitored by, again, whoever controls Vault-Tec, which we don't really truly know. We know Mr. House is definitely a top member. We know Hank McLean is working for him, but you also know that Hank McLean is working for a third party. So again, we don't really know where these experiments led to and who has all the information and what they did with it. Also, we do see that about 200-300 years after the war, many of these vaults have either been abandoned by the residents or broken into by raiders, which we see in the very first episode of the Fallout TV show. So immediately after the bombs dropped, there is a period known as the Long Dark. For a few decades, humanity had barely made it. We also began to see people mutate into ghouls. When it comes to a ghoul, there are two different types. There's the feral ghoul, which is basically just an animal at that point, just constantly attacking whatever it can see, whatever it's nearby. But then we also see intelligent ghouls. Walton Goggins, Cooper Howard is a prime example, specifically because we don't really see many ghouls who have been alive since the very beginning of the war. Though most of them have survived from the very beginning, after mutating for so many years after not having access to Radaway, the other chemicals that Cooper Howard uses to stay sane, we see most ghouls eventually turn feral over time. And that's what makes Cooper Howard's the ghoul extraordinary, because he has managed to survive the entire nuclear fallout centuries after the war, and he has still not become feral. So decades after the excessive and immense nuclear fallout begins to fade, we do see pockets of humanity still have survived to form communities, to form tribes. And we see many of these factions begin to either grow themselves or go to war with each other in order to gain resources, which again was most likely an intended part from Vault-Tec. They most likely knew that this was going to happen, that this was the next phase, which is why they developed bunkers deep underground. So not only to survive the fallout radiation, but to survive the chaos above. Many of the vaults not only have rations and supplies, but methods to keep the population healthy long-term generations. So now we're going to go into chapter 3, which is going to list all of the factions and societies that formed after the Great Fallout. Due to the American government collapsing, we see many different tribes and clans not only form together, but form their own militias and begin to attack each other, take each other's resources. One of the most popular and strongest, I would say, factions of the Wasteland is the Brotherhood of Steel. So we'll go ahead and start there. The Brotherhood of Steel started off as remnants of the US Army, soldiers who were either forced out or quit on their own accord. The thing with the Brotherhood is that they have become so large throughout the Wasteland and America that they have different factions now. And the Brotherhood's different factions all kind of maintaining themselves and maintaining the Wasteland. Season 2 brings up Xander, who is from the Commonwealth, or the Northeast American side of the... He mentions that his side of the Brotherhood of Steel are mostly composed of soldiers who take action and initiative, and points out that the New Vegas, that the West Coast version of the Brotherhood of Steel, the faction that is controlled by Quintus, has more of a religious authority and justifies most of their actions with some type of religious fever. The Brotherhood was founded not necessarily as a group, but as an organized rebellion. Quintus goes over the history of the founding, where he talks about Roger Maxon, an army officer. He found out that the US government and the US military was experimenting on humans. That led to him destroying the facility, cutting ties with both the US government and military, and forming his own faction of survivors and soldiers. The Brotherhood gained power, gained traction, and they firmly held the belief that technology was the main reason that Earth itself had fallen. This also led to the doctrine that the Brotherhood of Steel is to capture and hoard as much technology as possible so that only they can use it. Again, they say that the reason is to prevent global catastrophe, but at this point it seems that the leaders of the current Brotherhood of Steel are just doing whatever they can to maintain power, and in order to do that they have to hoard as much technology as they can. After years of gathering weapons, technology, ships, power suits, they have managed to create an entire army of different factions, each with their own giant airships, ships, again, power armor, and soldiers trained to use them. They also have other firm rules that can seem very unethical and are used as another form of power. Anytime they basically see anything that's not human, such as a feral ghoul or even a regular ghoul that can speak and is sound of mind, they still destroy it. They go after any type of robots or anything that uses any form of artificial intelligence. And they do so in a destructive manner. They basically prefer to, at the end of the day, have nobody, including themselves, use this technology, whether it's for good or bad. And their ethical alignment, I guess you could say, varies depending on the faction. You'll see some Brotherhood of Steel factions specifically raid and hoard just to get as many resources as possible. They will use their military force to completely take over settlements, sometimes even cities, and then from there they will dictate how the citizens live their lives. Some factions might generally mean well. They can go into a city and all of the feral ghouls, raiders, hostiles, and then just leave. But we do see that the majority of Brotherhood of Steel factions and its members abuse their power, especially the ones with power armor. We also see them constantly attack almost any other group that also has power that also could be a potential threat to them. They're pretty much at war with everyone in the Wasteland. We see in Fallout 4 that they attack Minutemen, they attack the Institute. They're at war with almost all synths. are artificial intelligent, basically robots, but they're designed to look like and mimic humans to the point where many humans can't distinguish them. It does end up causing issues, fear, and chaos within cities in Fallout 4. So there is some justification with the Brotherhood of Steel, but then we also see them actively be aggressive towards other synths that simply just want to live in peace, that don't do anything, that maybe were created by the Institute but don't follow the Institute's orders. Yet, despite that, the Brotherhood of Steel almost shows no mercy. See in an episode of Season 2 where Quintus Maximus, where Titus, who is at this point of the show seemed to be a morally good character, one who has survived the chaos of the wasteland, is actively trying to make it better. He runs into a group of children in a factory. Half of them are ghouls, and the other half of them are humans. Alongside Maximus was Paladin Harkness, who is an envoy from the Commonwealth faction of the Brotherhood of Steel. He also seems to be a very high up authoritative figure, and one who actually fights on the front lines with his other fellow members of the Brotherhood of Steel, which most likely means that he has a lot of respect on their end. When exploring this factory and finding the group, Harkness decides to take out the ghoul children, which Maximus is vehemently against, pleads him multiple times not to do it, and eventually takes out Harkness. He tells this story to Quintus, again a leader of the West Coast faction of the Brotherhood of Steel. After finding this out, Quintus basically completely turns against Maximus, who Quintus had raised Maximus from a very young age after finding him being the sole survivor of the destruction of Shady Sands. So he's literally a father figure to Maximus, and yet after finding out that Maximus spared the ghoul children, Quintus draws his weapon on him and drops a bunch of religious fever, basically showing that even though the soldier-like faction of the Commonwealth Brotherhood of Steel and the religious side of the West Coast Brotherhood of Steel, they all agree on certain ways to go about ruling the wasteland. And Maximus, who is generally just seems to be a decent guy, is almost against all of them, eventually leads to the destruction of that West Coast Brotherhood of Steel. At least that's what it looks like. And then him and former squire of the Brotherhood of Steel, who is now a ghoul, Thaddeus, the two of them escape the destruction of the West Coast Brotherhood of Steel, which shows that while most of the rulers and top figures of the Brotherhood of Steel are going about ruling the wastelands in their own ways and oftentimes brutal ways, many of the members of the Brotherhood of Steel were merely just forced into that life. A lot of times they were conscripted at a very young age. And it really just shows that the Brotherhood of Steel is more focused on power and dominance than actually saving the world from technology. We next have another faction that primarily dominated both Fallout 2 and Fallout 3. They didn't show up in Fallout 4. But this is the Enclave. They are another group of mostly soldiers and warriors, fighters. They aren't as large or as well armed as the Brotherhood of Steel, but they do have bases, they do have access to power armor. And a major plot point of Fallout 3 was that the Enclave intended to basically wipe out all of the humans above the surface. They didn't care for much. We're not targeting the humans living safe, clean lives inside of the vaults, but they basically viewed all of these survivors of the surface, even the ones that were perfectly healthy, they deemed them as near mutants. And in an effort to eradicate all of the mutants, they decided to also eradicate all the humans as well, mostly by poisoning a water supply. and they also use other methods as well. And this is a very stark contrast to the Brotherhood of Steel, who didn't necessarily want to wipe out humanity, but control it, whereas the Enclave just wanted a clean slate, again after the initial fallout, which was started by Vault-Tec. It's also worth noting that even centuries after the war, most of humanity isn't aware that Vault-Tec is the one responsible, that Vault-Tec is secretly running all these different experiments, and that majority of survivors and civilizations still believe that the war was caused by tensions between the United States and China. Next up, I have another faction that was one of my favorites just to witness in Fallout 4, specifically because I did not see them coming. It was a pretty crazy surprise. But we do have the Institute, that are primarily based in MIT, Massachusetts, and they are formed of mostly MIT scientists who survived after the war. And not only did the scientists survive, but the advanced technology within their bunkers was so advanced that they were able to create synthetic humans. Again, the completely artificial intelligent robots that were designed with human skin and human motions that are so realistic they can be placed in cities and walk around without rousing suspicion. You also see in Fallout 4 that they have access to other crazy technology like teleportation, laser weapons. One of their key objectives shown in Fallout 4 is, again, another method of control and supremacy. They basically do so by kidnapping regular humans from different pockets of civilizations and cities and tribes, like Diamond City in Fallout 4. They will take the humans, create a synth with the same exact likeness of that human. They have access to their memories as well, which I believe they can clone those memories and put them into the synth so that the synth itself believes it's that human. Then they place those synths back into the cities without the synth knowing that it's, again, a synth thinking that it's a human. I don't believe it delves into why they do this, but it's just shown that they can do it, that they do it, that it causes extreme paranoia and tensions within the city of Diamond City and also the rest of the Commonwealth wasteland. You see many survivors basically afraid of not only the Institute, but afraid of each other because they just don't know if the person next to them is a synth or not. This is also a pretty major theme within Westworld, the TV show that was also produced by Fallout's Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy. The show Westworld shows many different robots that are designed to be so lifelike that they themselves actually believe that they're human. These robots eventually are integrated into humanity, and a lot of different things go down in that show. It's pretty cool that both Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy are back in Fallout, and we're seeing their same themes in the show. I'm pretty sure eventually down the line, maybe even season 2, we're going to see some synths. But the show has confirmed that the Commonwealth exists, so most likely all of the events of Fallout 4, including synths, are canon. Now, the Institute's history also leads us to the main opposing faction of the Institute, which is the Railroad. The Railroad are a group of people. They're basically the good guy group of Fallout 4, and their main objective is to free as many synths as they can to stop any kind of Brotherhood of Steel prejudice against them, to save them from that prejudice, to possibly erase their memories or erase any objectives ingrained into them from the Institute. They basically want to get the synths, free them from whatever is controlling them, and then allow the synths to grow their own personalities and live in peace amongst each other. It's unfortunate that while they're considered probably the most morally ground group of the Wasteland, the good guys of the Wasteland, they are also the least armed and probably weakest group of the Wasteland. See them often using scraps and makeshift weapons. They never have access to power armor or ships, and they often move in secrecy. Yet they are still effective at their main goal of hiding and removing synths from the different factions that are actively against them. Another major group that are considered the good guys, or the heroes of the Fallout universe, are the New California Republic, often called the NCR. They were a joinable faction in Fallout New Vegas, and we do show members of the New California Republic show up in Fallout Season 2. Again, also in New Vegas, about 15 years after the events of the Fallout New Vegas game. We do see that after years of war and fighting against primarily the Legion, another faction in New Vegas, that the New California Republic has become weakened, that they don't have the strength or numbers that they used to, but that they're still holding on and attempting to complete their mission of providing things like pure water or freedom, rights for ghouls, which we do not see any other group fighting for ghouls. So while they are morally just and seem to be a good pocket of humanity in the craziness of the Wasteland, it is also unfortunate to note that, just like the Railroad, the final group, very similar to the NCR, another group known as the Good Guys, whose main objective seem to be helping the Wasteland. We have the Minutemen. They were shown in a joinable faction in Fallout 4. Chance that since the Commonwealth was mentioned in the show that they'll probably show up maybe Season 3 or end of Season 2. There's also speculation that Maximus might be joining the Minutemen, as after leaving the Brotherhood, the Minutemen is basically the only group that aligns with his moral values. And it seems like he would be a good fit. I actually believe Maximus would be great for the Minutemen. They're basically the volunteer sheriffs of the Commonwealth Wasteland. They are a militia. I don't believe they have access to ships prior to the main character of Fallout 4 joining them, but they do have some type of good weaponry, oftentimes. However, throughout the centuries of Wasteland, it seems that the Minutemen form together, then are collapsed and destroyed, only for them to form again. We see that in Fallout 4, where in the beginning there's literally just one Minuteman constantly telling you to go around the Fallout universe, gathering more Minutemen. Y'all know what I'm talking about. The GOAT, Preston Gravy. Their objective has never been to hoard or destroy any other type of civilization. All they seem to do is gather up, protect Wastelanders and survivors, protect their communities, protect their settlements, and really just fight other raiders or super mutants. And for the final faction, one that is probably the most cruel and vicious of all of them, are the Legion, which were just recently introduced into the show. The Legion are a group of primarily warriors who gathered together in New Vegas. They formed almost an army or militia composed of not just assault rifles but medieval weapons, and they also wear Roman traditional armor, and their entire civilization is basically structured as Old Rome. Their main leader is named Caesar. They call him Kaiser. The show basically confirmed that they were saying it wrong, though, that it should be pronounced Caesar, not Kaiser. And the current Legion of these shows, New Vegas, actually has them split between two factions of the same Legion, two different Caesars fighting over basically who should be the main Caesar. So aside from fighting every other group in the New Vegas wasteland, they're also fighting amongst each other now. Their culture, though, is very barbaric. They basically just take and enslave prisoners and form them into the Roman traditional society, which is not good at all. It's very almost barbaric. They literally crucify Lucy. But on the good news, it looks like recently Walter the Ghoul led them to fight, and hopefully that fight will have consequences that lead to their downfall. This leads to the final faction, not necessarily faction, but a product of the wasteland and the post-apocalyptic environment, which are just raiders themselves. You see raiders and fiends and scavengers in every section of post-nuclear wasteland America, from the West Coast to Washington to the Commonwealth. Groups that just aren't really into any faction, don't support any other faction, but just literally the 2 or 3 people in that group, or maybe it's just one person being a solo raider. Their existence and numbers around the country basically make the wasteland itself dangerous. That we even see in season 1 of Fallout, where Lucy and Maximus are just traveling and they come across another group of 2 people. They're not necessarily classified as raiders, but more like fiends. They weren't actively attacking anyone because they didn't really have anything to attack with. Once I saw that Lucy and Maximus were geared and clean, that's when they decided to try to attack. Luckily, Maximus was trained from the Brotherhood of Steel. That just shows that navigating the American wasteland, even centuries after the war, is still dangerous. And that's just from the human side. You also have all the different creatures. At scorpions, you have ghouls, you have super mutants, bugs that have stingers on them and armored shells. You also have death claws, which are just giant minotaur-like creatures that walk on 2 feet and walk with 2 legs. We also have the big major danger of the wasteland, which is constant radiation. There are pockets of America that are still heavily infested with radiation, to the point where just walking inside of it without any type of protection is deadly. We also see that a lot of the water around America has been contaminated with radiation, which makes finding fresh, clean water almost impossible, which also makes growing crops and sustaining civilizations and populations very difficult. It leads to many different wars, battles, skirmishes, simply over pure clean water. One of the objectives in Fallout 4, or at least an optional objective, is that a player can build water purifiers for their settlements. You form the settlements, you build the water purifiers, your settlement or settlers are happier and healthier, and you can even sell the water as well. All of the different factions and dangers of the wasteland make navigating and living in it extremely dangerous. It's why we see Lucy, after exiting the vault, have a shift in her initial demeanor. She's still primarily the good, bubbly, joyous person that we see. Even after being captured by the Legion, she still never really changed. But after spending time with the Ghoul, after navigating the wasteland, we are starting to see her become stronger, at least, more front forward, taking initiative, which most of the Vault Dwellers lack. For Chapter 5, we're going to go over now. Chapter 4 brings us to all of the different technology and advancements that are unique and particular to Fallout. The Fallout universe itself is pretty unique due to the fact that it does completely maintain a almost 1950s environment, aesthetic. You see 1950 like cars, TVs, clothes, suits, dresses. However, their main component of energy is from nuclear fission or cold fusion, a method of providing unlimited energy which a character, Moldaver, has supposedly invented. And after being in cryosleep and awakening hundreds of years later into the current Fallout timeline, she has a method of bringing that cold fusion back, and this leads to all the different factions basically fighting for it. The New California Republic, primarily, and the Brotherhood of Steel. In the first few episodes of the Fallout show, Season 1, she's painted as a villain who basically raids the vault Lucy and Hank McClean are in. Fortunately, some completely innocent vault dwellers do end up dying, which is pretty unfortunate, but the overall intention was supposedly so that Moldaver can take Hank McClean, use his authority and knowledge and access he got from being a high-level Vault-Tec member, and supposedly unlock the method of achieving cold fusion. The Fallout universe also has several of these battery-like items called fusion cores, which once used to power something can basically power it for years. We see the American government use it to power the power armor suits. We also see many different Fallout shelters that are able to be completely powered and functional for dozens of vault dwellers, all from a single fusion core. However, despite this supposed method of unlimited energy, the production of fusion cores led to a shortage of petroleum, which led to something unique of the Fallout universe known as the Resource Wars, which is basically a fight overall between the US government and the Chinese government. We also see many different types of robots powered and functional within the Fallout universe prior to the Fallout bombs being dropped. Every day, American citizens are seeing sometimes a robot in their own household, some type of cleaning robot or utility robot named Mr. Handy, which is a character in the Fallout 4 game. You got your own Mr. Handy known as Codsworth, who can also be a partner throughout the entire game, has his own unique dialogue and attacks, and is honestly one of the best characters of that game. Militaries also have invented different types of attack robots, assaultrons, explosive robots. We even see Liberty Prime, giant Titan Gundam Pacific Rim looking robot, powered by the US government, powered by patriotism, powered by freedom. Oddly enough, despite the advancements in nuclear energy and robotics, computing seems to be still at the same state as if it was in not 1950s, but maybe 1970s or 80s. We see little terminals, computers that run basic operating system, like literally just code and text, and that's it. The computers are often used to run facilities. We also see a lot of personal computers being used as diaries, journals. In the games, you're able to hack these computers if you put points in your different skills, intelligence skills. Sometimes those points also give you specific perks that let you do specific and unique things for a terminal. If you have a high skill value, you can oftentimes hack the computers and make them do things like open doors or disable robots. Actually see that a lot in the show as well. We see Norm going through the Vault Overseer's computers and basically eventually lead to freeing all of the Vault managers, Vault-Tec managers and supervisors that chose to be in cryosleep and awoken once the Fallout destruction is over. Power armor is also another huge factor of the Fallout universe. Basically just giant Iron Man suits. They move very slow though. They actually can fly, but they don't fly fast or far, but they do have jetpacks that allow them to hover. We do see that in the Fallout game and the Fallout Season 1 show. While being heavy and clunky, they do also provide, extreme tough armor. When paired with their assault rifles, they basically make giant walking tanks. The only thing is that they're prone to falling over. We see Walton Goggins, Cooper Howard still has a human form in 2077 era. He's fighting, or not 2077, but like more 2060, 2050s. He's fighting for the US government while wearing power armor, it falls over. As it falls over, he just can't get up. He's basically stuck there. Luckily, again, he's saved by a Deathclaw, which proves that the Deathclaw were most likely experiments, possibly from Vault-Tec, as they were around before the giant radiation fallout. Another evidence of possible human experimentation are the super mutants, which are just literally humans, but almost 7 to 8 feet tall, extremely muscular. Their intelligence is also very low. They can't really form sentences. If they do, it's often 1 or 2 words. Oftentimes, you just see them fighting each other, fighting whatever's near them. They're capable of using weapons, though. You do see patrols of super mutants all armed with both armor and assault rifles. And there are some unique super mutants, such as one that you meet in Fallout 4, who have completely kept their humanity, they retained their humanity. This was primarily from the Forced Evolutionary Virus, FEV, which is a bioweapon initially designed by supposedly the US government. Again, it's the same thing that led to Elder Maxson of the Brotherhood of Steel separating himself from that government and forming the Brotherhood of Steel faction. When it comes to dealing with the fallout radiation, we also have certain chemicals and medications and tools used primarily to fight off radiation. We have Radaway, which is a common item you find both in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, and we do find it in the TV show, which supposedly reduces the amount of radiation that a person has experienced. In the game, if you go into a radioactive area or you happen to drink radioactive water and you build up your radiation levels, you will slowly start to take damage. It'll hinder your abilities and skills. And the only way to get rid of that radiation is through something like Radaway. So because of that, in the lore and in the universe, Radaway itself is actually a very valuable item. Then we also have stim packs, which are literally just basically med kits within a syringe or needle. Throughout the games and shows, if a person takes damage, they just inject themselves with a stim pack and they're usually good to go. It usually either heals or suppresses whatever damage they took. There's also another item called the Garden of Eden Creation Kit, or GECK, I believe, which was designed by Vault-Tec, and they are used to terraform the destroyed radioactive segments of post-apocalyptic America, and therefore restoring it to its prior state. And finally, when it comes to the Fallout tech, we have my personal favorite item, which is the Pip-Boy. It is a computer basically strapped to your wrist. The computer screen is the size of a phone, but the entire strap is metallic. It can seem a little heavy, but at the game and gameplay, it's always a fun item to use. It's literally your HUD, both in-game and lore-wise. The person using a Pip-Boy can use it for a map, for knowledge, or as a codex. They can use it to listen to the radio. It even has mini games on it as well. I believe most of them have flashlights. I mean, it's literally just a cell phone mounted to your wrist, which, and again, to us sounds kind of weird, but when you play the game, it's very fun to use, especially considering that very few people lore-wise have Pip-Boys. They're often reserved to people within vaults. So a lot of times, if a person from the surface sees somebody with a Pip-Boy, they often know that that person is from a vault, or at least that person has more valuable gear on them. Now, after explaining the overall lore of the current Fallout universe, we're going to go ahead and take a look at where the universe is at, the major characters and players. We currently again have Vault-Tec, which we don't necessarily know who's running it. The only people that we do see are Hank McLean, who actively goes from Washington to New Vegas in order to find Mr. House, executive member of Vault-Tec, and also the leader / owner of New Vegas, at least in the New Vegas game. While on his journey from Washington to Vegas, he is aware that Lucy, his daughter, and also Cooper Howard the Ghoul are following him. He does make a stop at a vault on the way, manages to find a person, implants a brainwashing device that is shown from who we believe is Mr. House in season 2. The device, once implanted in the back of somebody's head, basically just completely puts them under control of the operator. Hank McClean uses that one person and only uses it to intimidate Lucy, to get her to turn around and go back to Washington, maybe even to also deter the Ghoul. But odds are he also knows that neither of those methods will work. It definitely certainly doesn't work, as the Ghoul and Lucy continue to follow him to New Vegas. Along that way, we do see Lucy basically kidnapped by the Legion. We see Cooper Howard save her from it, and after doing so, the Legion basically has another schism, another civil war. We don't really know what led to that. We just do know that they have fought again and could possibly be much weaker. After arriving in New Vegas, Lucy and Cooper, in order to get to where they believe Mr. House and Hank McClean are, have to clear a bunch of ghouls. And we also see Lucy seem to enjoy the process more. Definitely not be as hesitant as she was, maybe possibly because they're feral ghouls. We see her often, when it comes to fighting raiders, go for the leg shots or the arm shots, not to kill but just to disable. Her enjoyment with the ghoul fighting scene might just be showing that she's slightly leaning towards Cooper Howard's The Ghouls kind of method or way of thinking when it goes to navigating the wasteland. Upon arrival, we see a Deathclaw. The Deathclaw exits the door, and I actually believe that this Deathclaw might be under control from Hank McClean's brainwashing device. I believe that maybe that's what he was trying to do, was test the device on first rats, then humans, and now eventually maybe he has a Deathclaw. That hasn't been confirmed yet though, but I'm just gonna leave that for possible prediction. What we do also know though is that on Maximus' side, who we see from season 1, was a Brotherhood of Steel first squire, whose jobs are to basically assist anyone in a power armor suit. They follow the person in power armor suit. Their job is to keep them alive, keep the suit running. We see him basically take the suit from a paladin knight, a rare of the power armor, who Maximus just did not deem at the end of the day worthy of using the suit. Not necessarily because the original paladin owner failed to go by the Brotherhood of Steel doctrine, but basically because he wasn't using the power armor for any type of good, whereas Maximus seems to generally want it to use it so he can make a difference in the wasteland, so that he can help the wasteland. We got more on his backstory about how his father was one of the major leaders of Shady Sands, how they were making further advancements in the community in clean water, until who we see Hank McClean actually controlling a person and having that person drop off the nuke to Shady Sands, eventually destroying it. Maximus manages to survive after being placed in a refrigerator, kind of like that scene from Indiana Jones. After surviving, he's found by the Brotherhood of Steel, joins them, and now currently season 2 we see that in just merely trying to survive and avoid conflict seems to still find him. That the Brotherhood of Steel's different factions are just edging towards a war, possibly even grouping together so that they can fight the East Coast Commonwealth side of the faction of the Brotherhood of Steel, and just creating more chaos, more conflict. Eventually he's forced to leave after several events of season 2, and now we see him making his own journey with a previous fellow Brotherhood of Steel member, Thaddeus. The two of them are on their way, and it seems like the Mojave, California, East Coast Brotherhood faction is most likely destroyed now. We see that the other factions have also partaken in the fighting, but there is a slight possibility that maybe Maximus ends up in New Vegas. possibly reunited with Lucy and Walton Goggins, Cooper Howard, the Ghoul. I personally believe that, also considering the fact that the show is produced by Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, we are definitely going to eventually see interactions with either synths or the Minutemen or the Institute. There's a small theory going around that Paladin Harkness, the convoy from the Commonwealth Brotherhood of Steel, the one that Maximus ends up having to kill in order to save children and basically starts the civil war of the Brotherhood of Steel, that envoy Harkness is actually a synth. Just a theory, but we do have confirmation that if the Commonwealth exists, if the Brotherhood of Steel is still around, then there's a chance the Institute can still exist as well. That possibly they may have taken over the Brotherhood of Steel and completely conformed them all into synths. Don't really know where the show is going. That's the beauty of Fallout and the Fallout universe. So many different variations of our own current technology, our own different tensions, our own different advancements that we're making together. The most popular phrase from the show, one often said, is that war never changes. And we see that even 200 years after a war that ended the entire planet and global civilization, that there are still wars to be had over ideals, over territory, power, technology, food, resources. After decades, some of these groups managed to hoard vast amounts of power and wealth, while some of them have been either destroyed or barely managed to survive. We don't really see ethics dictate anything, but we do still see characters like Lucy and Maximus, who, despite growing up in a very destructive and chaotic world, still have a firm ground on their moral integrity. But then we also see characters like Cooper Howard, who initially started off as good men with good intentions, family men. Over 200 years of surviving the wasteland basically turned into not necessarily monsters, but almost careless when it comes to taking life. We don't see the Ghoul going out of his way to be evil, but he'll definitely do evil things in order to achieve his objectives, which the pre-war Cooper Howard seemed to be a man who wouldn't do that kind of thing. Another beauty of the show is that as we watch it, we're going to see his transformation from Cooper Howard to the Ghoul, and I believe also that the show might be attempting to mirror that same transformation with Lucy, showing a good person eventually turn into something like the Ghoul. And possibly the show might again show that Lucy won't do that she'll firmly stand her own ground. They know much yet, the show is still very young, only 2 seasons in, but it's nice that it's around to both expand and establish certain canon from all the different games. A lot of the games, Fallout 3, New Vegas 4, they all have multiple endings depending on the player choice. The show, while not giving us concrete answers or concrete canon, has given us slight points of lore and canon after the main games have ended. So there we have an hour of Fallout lore. Just know that there's still many things that I did not cover, I'll probably cover in the future. The show is also still ongoing, it's barely season 2. And there are plans for the Fallout 5 game eventually being released. We're also hearing things that there's a potential release of a Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas remake, as there's some kind of timer on the Fallout main website. Nobody knows what it is yet, I guess. There's still speculation. I myself would love a Fallout New Vegas remake, and I'm definitely looking forward to Fallout 5 after beating Fallout 4 multiple times. So there you have it. I hope you all have a good day.